Hey guys, it's Corey from CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com, and I just saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, written by Phil Lord, Rodney Rothman, and directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman. So I caught Into the Spider-Verse at Regal LA Live. I saw it in 3D. Really great time. I would say, maybe as a heads up to anybody who might be going to see this movie, this might have just been a Regal LA Live problem, or it might be a problem that other people experience. It was actually a pretty full house for this screening, and the only seats that we could get for the three of us were all the way in the back, like sort of in the top left corner in the final row. And there were times where it sounded like the sound was a little bit off. Like, it was a little bit more of a sometimes with animation you get sort of this disjointed voice feeling. And I don't know if that was the movie or if that was the fact that I was saying like way up in the far left corner. So I don't feel right to judge that, but for future reference, people who go into a movie theater and they want to know where to sit, usually the best place to sit is middle of the theater as humanly possible. If you got a theater that has like sort of two sections, like the bottom section and then like sort of like the section over top, the one that's sort of more at an angle, then you probably want to sit in like the first row right in the middle, because that's more than likely sort of where the sound mixer was when he was doing his final checks as to how everything sounds. I mean, most people don't usually sit in like all the different corners of the theater to make sure it works. They usually just pick right dead center, and that's usually the best place to go. So, Into the Spider-Verse does something very interesting. I mean, the story revolves around Miles Morales, who, much like in the Spider-Man canon, gets bit by the radioactive spider and gains powers. But this is a universe where we already have Spider-Man. So there's already Peter Parker, who's Spider-Man, with Mary Jane and everything like that. And he dies early on in the film. And in the process of his death, there's an alternate dimension that opens up that allows all the different Spider-Mans from different dimensions, like like a multiverse theory, to come through. And, you know, there's a sort of fuck-up Spider-Man, there's a noir Spider-Man, there's a pig Spider-Man, there's a Japanese girl with a robot Spider-Man from the future. And the idea of the movie is that Miles Morales, who's now the lone Spider-Man in the generation, or in the universe that we're familiar with, has to team up with all the other Spider-Men to bring down Kingpin and return everyone back to their original universe. I really enjoyed the hell out of this flick. For all the lambasting that I gave Aquaman a couple weeks back, I think that this film really figured out pretty early on what it wanted to be, and it wanted to be different, and it wanted to be something special, and they just went for it. And it was such a... Rob and I got into it after the screening, sort of talking about the differences between this and Aquaman, and he said it's two completely different things. But really what I liked about this movie is just how much they cared and how much they went for it and how much heart it has. And it really, unlike any comic book movie that I had seen before, this one really sort of buys into the aesthetic feeling of reading a comic way more than any superhero comic book movie has in the past. And I really enjoy that. It's amazing how you watch like the old Batman, you know, like the Adam West Batman TV show, and there's a lot of kish involved. Like it's a lot, you know, like the pow and the wop and the big word bubbles that show up on screen and stuff like that. And part of the reason why that made it to the TV show is because the idea of a comic where, you know, you would see Batman throwing a punch, and then the very next panel you see the pow, and then you see the next panel with the enemy like reeling from the punch. You know, that sort of thing, it speaks to the way that people read comics and the way people enjoy it as an art form and all of its own. enjoy it. And it was really great to be able to see the effects, like, you know, like Miles Morales is falling off the building, and you see the like all the way down. It just really was a wonderful way of portraying the animated comic book movie, which again is something that we just haven't had a lot of. And, you know, Lord and Miller are both you know, producers on this movie. Phil Lord helped write the movie, and they both did the Lego movie, which they did a lot of other things too. But I mean, like this, there definitely sort of feels like sort of a crossover between Spider-Man and the Lego movie throughout this whole thing, and it's just fun. Like it takes what's fun about, you know, a certain particular thing. So, like, you know, obviously in the Lego movie, it's like, you know, there's just a clear and obvious love for Legos and Lego culture, and in Into the Spider-Verse, it's sort of this love of comics that doesn't get painted into these serious comic book films that often. And I really enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought it was remarkable. Another thing I really enjoyed about this flick was that so often the idea of somebody becoming a superhero, I mean, obviously it doesn't work so much in like Superman where he's an alien or something like that, but the idea behind like Spider-Man specifically is that, you know, Peter Parker is this, you know, like really smart but nerdy kid who doesn't fit in, and he doesn't feel like he has a place in this world, and he gets bit by the spider, and now he's a hero, and now he's able to save people, and now he's able to be the thing that he always wanted to be. But with that comes the, you know, I'm not going to be able to keep my family safe or my friends safe, because if someone finds out that I'm, you know, Peter Parker is Spider-Man, then everyone who is close to me goes too. And there's something to be said that those stories probably would fit in with communities like, you know, that Miles Morales, like half black, half Latino kid from Brooklyn, who, you know, the story in his is talking about like how, you know, he's going to this like magnet school, which is going to be really incredible for him, but he doesn't want to go because he wants to be with all his kids, all his friends, and you know, like this public Brooklyn school and stuff like that. And it really opens up all these different opportunities for every kid who goes to see this movie, regardless of who they are, to feel like that there's a place where Spider-Man could be talking about them. And I really like that, because, I mean, you know, we all love Peter Parker, we all love Gwen Stacy, we all love Mary Jane Watson and stuff like that. But the idea that, you know, like, just a black kid in Brooklyn could be watching this movie and feel like they could be Spider-Man, like that there's an opening for them to be able to feel that way, is just great. And, you know, when the alternate universe Gwen Stacy comes in as Spider-Woman and stuff like that, it allows her to be able to, like, allows girls and women to feel like, you know, that there's a place in the Spider-Man universe for them. And, I mean, beyond that, just the fact that all these different Spider-Mans exist, and that whenever we sort of hear about a new one, a comic book gets thrown on the ground and just added on to the pile of comic books that are already there, sort of speaks to the idea that, you know, these superheroes reinvent themselves every so often. Like, you know, there's obviously the original sort of Amazing Spider-Man that is carried through, but every once in a while they create a new series, they reboot it, they put a new spin on it, and Spider-Man doesn't have to be the exact same story it was before. And this sort of speaks to, as a comic book fan, how you can go and buy a new version of Spider-Man that has a different take on it by a different artist and a different writer, and it all feels new and special in a way that you didn't think that it could feel before. It's a lot like I remember, you know, it's kind of an unusual example, but it feels apt at the same time, which is the when Ichiro came to play Major League Baseball. Like, he was playing this game that had sort of passed by baseball for, you know, he was playing like this early 1900s style baseball. but in this new generation. And when he came over to the majors, he felt like an instant throwback, but he was doing it old thing new again, and it felt completely like a breath of fresh air. And that's sort of what the whole time I was watching this, I was just like, this is the same thing I've seen before, but with new life breathed into it. And I just can't speak highly enough of the work that was done, the incredible time-inducing work that was involved in making this thing happen. On top of that, I wanted to speak to the incredible voice talent, Shameik Moore, Jake Johnson, Hailee Steinfeld, Mahershala Ali. They all added like this level of like, it's not like gravitas, but it just felt like the characters were all lived in. And I really enjoy that in a comic book or in like a cartoon movie, because it can be so difficult to feel like this character has been existing prior to the time that it was animated. Like this thing didn't just pop up out of whole cloth somewhere else. And I really just enjoyed the hell out of the whole thing. I think, and I don't know this, a buddy of mine auditioned for Miles Morales, and it's Roberto. He's a Mexican actor. And I think there might have been a time where they were thinking about sort of making Miles a little bit more like Latino, or like there was a lot of, I remember helping him record an audition for it, and it was a lot of like, we're going to be unapologetically bilingual in this film, and they went a different way, obviously, from that casting session that they were looking for. But I thought that Shameik Moore was just, a star the whole time through. It's just like he nailed it, and I really can't wait to see. And they got to make another one, because this universe is too rich not to examine it more. But I'm looking forward to the second crack at this, because I think that it's gonna be really interesting. With great power comes a great leaderboard. Caught this movie at Regal LA Live. That is the 20th time that I've seen a movie at Regal LA Live since I started doing these reviews, so hurrah for Regal LA Live. To the movie leaderboard, it's tough to really figure out exactly where I want this movie to live as far as a rating goes, because it's like I had so much fun, and it's a very faithful, loyal adaptation to a comic book that doesn't exist. But it feels it's just like to the art of comic books. But it's also different, and it's hard to rate something that's different to things that have come. Like it's easy to rate an Aquaman because it feels so much like other movies. Specifically, that one feels like a movie that came out 20 years ago. But if I have to rate Into the Spider-Verse, give it an 8.3. It's hard for me to... I was thinking about it on the way out. It's hard for me not to put it as my favorite Spider-Man movie. And I think that if I was, 10 years old or something like that, like, this would just be my favorite thing that I've ever seen. And I think that a lot of the things, anything that I really had a problem with, like, I didn't care for the soundtrack, and there was a lot of, like, little things. But, I mean, like, it's not for me. So it's also, like, it's not about me, the 35-year-old guy who makes movies in LA, being like, being all in on it. It's more about like 10-year-old kids who are going to see this and love it. And to me, that's the most important part. If you have kids, you definitely should go take them to it, especially if you have kids who feel like that they don't have a place. Like, they're not like, a popular kid or something like that. Like, they would probably love the shit out of this movie. Yeah. Also, if you've ever lived in New York or live in New York currently or anything like that, of all the Spider-Man movies, this one feels the most New York of any of them, and that's always sort of been a touchstone in the comics that I feel like hasn't really translated 100% into the movies. Like, it's never felt as New York as it really should. But this one nails it. This one, it literally felt like I went to New York for a couple hours. So, even though it was a cartoon, it was wonderful. Anywho, that's it for me. If you want more, you can go to my website, CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com. Follow along all the fun on social media, Facebook.com/CoreyBakerFilm, @LegendCB5 on Twitter and Instagram. If there's anything that you want me to see, review, let me know in the comments below. If you have any thoughts on Into the Spider-Verse, I'd love to hear them. Comment below as well. Subscribe so that you can see future videos. And yeah, that's about it. I will probably go see another film for next week. And on top of that, we're getting closer and closer to Oscar time. So as soon as the nominees are out, I'll probably do a video just sort of talking about what I think is going on with that and where my heart lies on picks and everything like that. So anyway, if you excuse me, I have to go save the city from the best version of Kingpin I've ever seen in any kind of movie.